Welcome back to the deep dive. Today we are tackling a history lesson that, well, it spans about 70,000 years, and it really challenges pretty much everything you think you know about being human.
We are diving into Yuval Noah Harari's huge work, Sapiens, A Brief History of Humankind.
And our mission today is to unpack its central thesis, that big idea about how we came to dominate the planet, and we're going to trace that path through the cognitive, agricultural, and scientific revolutions.
But the core idea, the thing that really made this book a phenomenon, is that the reason Homo sapiens won out wasn't because we were stronger or had better tools.
It was something much stranger.
It was our unique ability to create and collectively believe in things that don't physically exist,
Yeah.
what Harari famously calls shared fictions.
And we're talking about everything, concepts like nations, money, even human rights. These shared stories are what allow millions of strangers to work together.
Exactly. But it's a double-edged sword.
Right.
Harari frames this whole story as a series of, well, of brutal trade-offs.
But progress, but at a cost.
A staggering cost to individual happiness, to other species, and definitely to the planet. We have to keep that balance in mind as we go.
Okay, so let's unpack this and start at the very beginning. Let's say 70,000 years ago. Before this big cognitive revolution, sapiens were pretty insignificant.
We were, as he puts it, an animal of no significance. Just another ape, really.
And we weren't alone, right? There were other humans.
Oh, absolutely. There were at least 6 other human species around. You had Neanderthals in Europe, Homo erectus in Asia. We were just one of several options on the menu.
So what set us apart was this huge brain, but that came with a massive biological price tag, didn't it?
A huge one. I mean, it's an astronomical energy bill.
How big are we talking?
Well, our brain consumes a stunning 25% of our body's energy when we're at rest.
25%.
Yeah, 25. And it's only, what, 2 or 3% of our body weight? So that's a massive resource drain that forced some big changes.
Like walking upright, which sounds great, but it had a downside.
It did. It narrowed the hips, which meant babies had to be born, well, prematurely, before their heads got too big to pass through.
And that leads to helpless infants and years of dependency.
Right. And that dependency practically forced us to create stronger social bonds, stronger tribes, just to keep the kids alive. The other big piece of the puzzle was fire.
For cooking.
Exactly. Cooking food shortens the intestines, saves a ton of digestive energy, and all that surplus energy gets funneled right back up to our hungry brains.
So we go from being this marginal creature to the top of the food chain really, really fast. Harari calls this a hasty ascent. What's the problem with rising so quickly?
The problem is psychological. Our evolution just couldn't keep up. We got all this godlike power over the planet, but we kept the anxieties and fears of a creature that spent 2 million years in the middle of the food chain.
And he argues that's what's still fueling our wars and ecological carelessness.
It's a compelling argument. We're a predator with a nervous system of prey.
And just to be clear, we didn't just outcompete those other human species. The data shows we interbred with them.
We did. There's Neanderthal DNA in many modern humans.
Yes.
So we cooperated, and then we likely wiped them out. It's complicated.
Okay, which brings us to the main event, the cognitive revolution, 70,000 years ago. This is where language changes everything.
Right. And it's not just language for watch out, there's a lion. First, it's gossip.
Gossip.
Yeah, gossip.
Yeah.
It lets you build trust and cooperate in groups up to about 150 people. But the real breakthrough was language about things that aren't real.
Fictions, myths, gods, nations.
Exactly. Suddenly you can get 10,000 people to build a pyramid because they all believe in the same god, or fight a war for a country that only exists in their shared imagination.
This is that idea of intersubjective reality. Can you break that down? Because calling something like human rights a fiction sounds pretty cynical.
It does, but he defines it very carefully. You have objective reality, like a tree. It's there whether you believe in it or not. Then you have subjective reality, which is just my personal feeling or dream.
Yeah.
But intersubjective reality exists only because a whole network of people believe in it. His go-to example is a corporation, like Peugeot.
Okay.
Peugeot isn't a car or a factory. It's a legal fiction. It only exists because lawyers, governments, and customers all agreed to believe in the story of what Peugeot is. If you all stopped believing, it would just vanish.
So money is the ultimate intersubjective reality.
The ultimate. It's just paper, but we all agree it has value.
So let's picture the lives of these hunter-gatherers. The book pushes back on the idea that they were just struggling to survive.
Oh, definitely. He calls them the original affluent society. Their diets were incredibly varied and healthy. They worked fewer hours than we do today, maybe 35, 45 hours a week. and they were fit like marathon runners.
But it wasn't a paradise. Life was brutal in other ways.
Absolutely. Child mortality was terrifyingly high, and a broken leg could be a death sentence. But, and this is key, it was arguably a better life than what came next.
Before we get to that, let's talk about our first major impact on the planet. The first wave extinction.
Yeah, this is where the data is just shocking. Sapiens arrived in Australia 45,000 years ago. Within a few thousand years, 23 of the 24 large animal species there are gone.
Wiped out.
Completely. Same story in the Americas. We crossed over 16,000 years ago, and most of the huge mammals, the mammoths, the saber-toothed cats, they just disappear.
It's hard to believe a few hunter-gatherers could do that.
But the pattern is undeniable. We were an ecological serial killer long before the steam engine was ever invented.
Okay, so if the cognitive revolution gave us the power of the mind, the next revolution, it basically trapped us. The agricultural revolution 12,000 years ago. Harari calls it history's biggest fraud.
And it's such a provocative line, but he backs it up. The average farmer's life was just objectively worse than a forager's.
How so?
They worked harder for longer hours. Their diet became incredibly monotonous, mostly just wheat or rice. So, hello, vitamin deficiencies. And living in crowded villages meant disease spread like wildfire.
So, we didn't domesticate wheat. Wheat domesticated us.
That is his exact point.
Yeah.
From the wheat's perspective, it was the greatest success story in history. It went from a weed in the Middle East to covering the entire planet.
And it used us as its slaves to do it.
Pretty much. And this is what he calls the luxury trap. It explains why we couldn't just go back.
Luxury trap,
A
right?
little bit of extra food from farming allows the population to grow just enough that you can no longer feed everyone by going back to foraging. You're trapped. You have to keep farming, even if it's a miserable life.
And the population booms, but so does child mortality.
Horrifically, about a third of children died before they reached age 20. It's a brutal numbers game.
Now, all this farming creates a new problem. Data overload. The human brain can't track thousands of bushels of wheat and tax payments.
And that's what drives the invention of writing. The first writing wasn't poetry or philosophy.
It was accounting.
It was pure data processing, invented by the Sumerians to keep track of debts and taxes. It was all business.
So to manage these huge agricultural societies, you need those fictions again, these imagined orders.
Right. And those imagined orders, whether it's the Code of Hammurabi or modern consumerism, are what justify hierarchies. Harari is very blunt here. There's no innate justice in history.
What does he mean by that?
He means that things like racism or sexism aren't biological realities. They are cultural fictions, myths that are built into our institutions to justify an unequal distribution of power. Biology enables, but culture forbids.
It's a very powerful idea. Okay, let's move to the third major section, the unification of humankind. The world starts trending toward bigger and bigger megacultures.
Driven by three forces: merchants, conquerors, and prophets.
And the greatest unifier of all.
Money, no question. It succeeds where gods and kings fail because it's the ultimate system of trust.
Two people who hate each other's guts can still do business if they both trust the same gold coin.
Exactly. Then you have empires. They're brutal, they're exploitative, but their legacy is everywhere. They spread culture, laws, and language, and forcibly melt down hundreds of cultures into one.
And what about religion? The source material draws a pretty sharp contrast between older beliefs and monotheism.
It does. It frames early polytheism as generally more tolerant, because if you have many gods, you can usually find room for one more. But monotheism, the belief in one true God, tends to be far more fanatical.
But even then, religions blend, that process of syncretism.
Syncretism, yeah.
Yeah.
A pagan goddess in Ireland gets absorbed into Christianity and becomes St. Bridget. It happens all the time. And today, our religions are just secular. Liberalism, humanism, even consumerism.
Which brings us to the last big shift, the scientific revolution, about 500 years ago.
And for Harari, the single most important part of this wasn't a discovery, it was an idea.
Which was?
The discovery of ignorance.
That sounds like a contradiction. How did admitting we knew nothing lead to so much progress?
Well, before 1500, every belief system assumed all the important knowledge was already known. It was in the Bible or in Aristotle. The scientific revolution was the first time humanity said, we don't know, and then developed a formal method observation, math experiment to find out.
And crucially, it sought knowledge for power and utility, not just for truth.
Precisely. And this new mindset married perfectly with empire and capitalism. European maps suddenly had huge empty spaces on them. That was an admission of ignorance and an invitation to go conquer.
And science gave them the tools to do it.
It gave him a huge military advantage. You see it with someone like Cortez versus the Aztecs. It wasn't just guns. It was navigation, organization, a whole different way of thinking.
But this partnership between science, empire, and capital had an incredibly dark side.
Oh, a massive one.
Yeah.
The insatiable need for growth fueled things like the Atlantic slave trade and the Opium Wars, where Britain deliberately addicted millions of Chinese people to drugs just to fix a trade imbalance.
It's a complete reframing of progress.
The new ethic was that greed is good because it drives growth, which is the ultimate goal.
So that brings us to the modern day. The Industrial Revolution shatters the old bonds of family and community. What replaces them?
The state and the market. These two huge impersonal forces take over the roles that family used to play. And to fill that void, we create new imagined communities.
Like the nation state.
Yeah.
Or being part of a consumer tribe.
Exactly. We identify with people who buy the same things we do.
So after all this progress, why aren't we happier?
Because happiness, he argues, isn't about objective conditions. It's about the gap between your conditions and your expectations.
And modern media is an expectation-inflating machine.
It is. It constantly depletes contentment by showing you something better.
And yet we're living in what is, statistically, the most peaceful era in human history.
It's a paradox. Violence is down, partly because of nuclear weapons, but also because wealth is no longer in land you can conquer. It's in human capital knowledge. You can't really steal that with an army.
So Sapiens has become godlike, but we're still irresponsible and anxious.
That's the synthesis. We have the power to reshape the planet, but we don't really know what we're doing.
And this leads to the final terrifying chapter, the end of Homo sapiens. Because now we can actually engineer our successors.
Right. Through biotech and AI, we're taking over the process of evolution from natural selection. We are literally designing what comes next.
Which raises the ultimate question. What do we want to become?
And, even scarier, what do we want? How do we design our own desires without being trapped by our old, flawed programming? It's a huge, open question.
What a journey. From an insignificant ape through these three massive revolutions, all powered by our ability to believe in shared stories. Fictions that built civilizations and also caused immense destruction.
And I think the biggest takeaway from this deep dive is just how powerful that knowledge is. To realize that the world we live in, its rules, its morals, it's not natural. It's a cultural construct.
It's a story we're all agreeing to tell each other.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And that means the story can be changed.
So here's the provocative thought we want to leave you with. If Harari is right that we're trending toward a unified global culture and we are now on the verge of designing our post-sapien successors, what single intersubjective fiction, what core belief about humanity will we need to agree on to govern that new world? Think about the myths you live by today and what you would choose for tomorrow. We'll see you next time.